Hi, it's Aaron. I wanted to make a quick video to talk about a topic that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And really what I wanted to do is just sort of just give you an off the cuff, sort of uncensored, my take on the music business. And without really any agenda, without trying to sell you anything, without trying to convince you of anything, I wanted to sort of just talk about the music business in general. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because I've been looking a lot the last couple days at my blog posts. And I've had a blog on my website for the last couple years, and usually once a week or at least a few times a month I write a blog post. And I've been looking at this blog post, and I've sort of noticed this, what could be maybe perceived as a little bit of a dissonance in the message that I'm trying to convey. So I wanted to make this video to sort of clarify what I really think about the music business, and I'll explain what I mean. So on one hand, I'm making videos and I'm doing blog posts and I'm talking about how to make money through music licensing. That's really what I focus on. That's been my focus over the last almost 10 years now. And the reason I focus on licensing is because I think licensing is one of those areas that you still can make money from. And we all know that CD sales are down and people don't effectively buy music anymore. I mean, very few people do. It's become harder in a lot of ways to make money as a musician. And so I focus on licensing because, let's face it, making money is important. And if you want to make a living from music, obviously you need to figure out how to monetize that. So I've really focused on licensing because I really do think it's a viable way to make money with your music. But on the other hand, on the flip side, I do a lot of blog posts where I talk about sort of ways of redefining success and looking at the music business a little bit differently, and questioning our motives, and questioning whether or not wanting to be ultra successful is a really good motivating factor in the first place. So, for example, a couple days ago, I wrote a blog post called 99.9% of you will never, quote unquote, make it. And the idea of the blog post was, I just said, hey, look, I've been doing this 20 years. I've been a musician for over 20 years now. I went to Berklee College of Music. I've played in bands. Throughout that 20-year period, I've probably known at least 1,000 musicians that I've interacted with and met and befriended over the years. And of those 1,000 musicians, I probably can think of really just one that I would consider sort of having made it based on the definition most of us subscribe to that idea. And even in that case, it was only a couple years. It was very short-lived, and this particular person isn't doing as well as he was a few years ago. So, and you can do this in your own life. Just look at the number of musicians you know and ask yourself how many of them are rock stars. How many of them are actually what you would consider, having made it. And if you're anything like me or my friends, probably very few. And maybe you do know one or two rock stars. And if you do, cool. But the point of the blog post, I went on to sort of clarify, the point is, I don't think we should necessarily be overly concerned with making it in the first place. I don't necessarily think that goal is the best reason to go into the music business. And the reason I feel that way is because I think if your whole goal in life and your whole reason for wanting to get into the music business is to make it, what will probably happen, what usually happens, and perhaps this is the reason why more musicians don't make it, but what will probably happen is you'll probably try it for a couple years. You will inevitably face immense obstacles, rejection, setback. Things won't go as smoothly as you want them to go. And if your only motivating factor for going into the music business is to make it, you'll probably end up just quitting. You'll probably get discouraged and you'll find something else. Because let's face it, this is not an easy business to go into. And something I try, kind of the whole point of this video, what I'm trying really hard to do with my podcast and my content and my YouTube channel, on one hand, I'm trying to motivate you. If you want to make music and it's your motivation in life to make music, I want to help you to figure out a way to make money from your music. That's really my main motivation for doing all of this. But on the other hand, I also am striving to be as authentic and honest and ethical as possible. So on my podcast, for example, I interview a lot of people in the business, and I ask people very straightforward, candid questions about how hard the music business is. I ask questions about how hard it is to make a living licensing music. And a lot of the times the answers I get aren't necessarily what I want to hear, and they're not necessarily what I want to convey to you, but they are real. And so I strive really hard to give you as realistic and honest of a perspective as possible about what this takes. And the reason I do that, the reason that's so important to me, there's so many marketers online, and there's so many people that have courses and things they're trying to sell. And a lot of marketing is sort of creating this false sense of optimism. And I really don't want to be that person. And maybe by being as honest as I am and sort of candid about things as I am, maybe I'm missing out on some sales. And if that's the case, so be it. I would rather lose a few sales than feel like I'm misleading any of you. So sort of the way I look at it to sort of sum up the message that I want to convey in this video, when people come to me now that are maybe considering going into the music business, who are maybe 20 or 25, maybe even 30, whatever, but they're considering going into the music business, they have a passion for music. This is the way I look at it. I ask them, if you knew with 100% certainty that you could live off of music, you could do it full time, but you would never make more than $50,000 a year, would you still go into the music business? Like, do you love it so much that you're not really motivated by money? And if you could get to $50,000, which isn't a ton of money, but $50,000 a year, if you knew you could get to that level, would you still do it? And if they say yes, I tell them they should go into the music business. And I think getting to that level of income is completely attainable. And I wouldn't say it's easy, but I would say it's relatively easy in the grand scheme of things. And I would go on to say that if you're that type of person that would still do it, even knowing you would never get past $50,000 a year, you'll probably figure out a way to make a lot more than that. I think the whole point is, if you love it and you really love making music for the sake of making music, you'll figure out ways to monetize it. Maybe through licensing, maybe through touring, maybe through a combination of a few different things. Getting to that sustainable level where you can live off of it is relatively easy. But I would never tell people that becoming a rock star, or quote unquote making it, is easy. And obviously we all, I think, know deep down that it's not easy, or else we would all be rock stars. But I wanted to make this video to sort of clarify that message that I want to convey. I think if you're drawn to making music, Tom Petty once said in an interview that I read years ago, and I thought he was sort of joking when he said this, but he said something to the effect of, unless you absolutely have to make music, unless you're just driven and compelled, unless you have this insatiable sort of appetite for music, you really shouldn't go into the music business. And I thought he was just kind of being, I didn't really think he was being serious at the time, but looking back, I think he was probably 100% serious. And that's basically how I feel about it. Unless you're so passionate about this that you can't imagine doing anything else, I wouldn't do it. But if you are that type of person, I think you'll figure out how to have a very successful life.